Right, I think we'll dive in anyway. It's 3 minutes past and we don't want to hold people up too much, and people can dip in when they arrive if I see them coming through. So thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning on our virtual workshop. Obviously we're recruiters, but we wanted to share some of the tips, techniques, and I suppose some of the workings around recruiting board members, trustees and non-executives. And this is really to help you consider perhaps running processes yourself, or just, being aware of, what things to think about. So hopefully we'll be able to help you, and to consider some areas. We wanted it to be interactive, and to join in and to share experience and, ask questions. So we'll pause after each slide and just see if anybody's got any questions about particular areas. And what we thought we would do is take you through the process, really, of all the steps behind the scenes and also right through, and just giving you, as I say, tips and techniques of how to go about recruiting a successful board and attracting trustees, governors and council members to voluntary positions. And I think that's a key thing, because a lot of people say to us, how do you find people to sit on your board without paying any money? And actually, we find it easy. So we'll share all that with you. And hopefully, it will be helpful for you. Might need to move on. Right, so just telling you a bit about us. You obviously know we are recruiters. We specialise in recruiting to the charity sector and not-for-profit. And probably a third of our work is recruiting to boards. And that includes chairs, trustees, board members and so forth. And I'd probably say 98% of those are voluntary. There's a very, very few minority of them that are actually paid. So most of the work that we do is placing people onto boards unpaid. And over the last 2 years, we have recruited just under 300 people onto boards. So we've got quite a bit of experience, I suppose. So I'm Director of Research. I put the research into search. I've been doing research for 35 years now. I started off in the British Council, actually, for my first 10 years. And in a role there, I was actually recruiting a bit of a fundraising role. So I was looking for commercial partners to help raise funds. But then I went into an executive search and spent the first 10 years of my career recruiting for FTSE 100 board leaders. And then I used that into the central government public sector space. And then in the last 10 years in the charity space. So I've got quite a wealth of experience of contacting people, researching people and so forth. And I suppose the thing I love about the job is because I'm nosy and I love craving knowledge and I love knowing about people. So I think that sort of bodes quite well in terms of finding people for the boards. So that's me.
And I'm Jennifer. I work alongside Liz. I'm one of our associate business managers, and all I do is I recruit trustees, NEDs, board members, governors into the charity and not-for-profit sector. I'm quite a governance geek in that way, and that's why I choose to do that bit of recruitment. I would say I recruit about perhaps 100 trustees a year, maybe a little bit more. So it definitely keeps me busy. I'm definitely a workaholic. Like Liz, I come from a research background as well. So the part I really love about my job is the different people you get to meet, but more importantly, the massive impact you can have at placing amazing people at board level and just seeing that charity, just move forward so rapidly in such a positive direction. It really is the best part of the job for me.
So going on to the first bit, which is around what are we looking for? And that really is around the organisation of what you are trying to do. And the key thing is, you've got to know where your organisation is going, what it wants to achieve and the impact it wants to make. So Jen, you might be able to sort of explore and expand those areas a little bit more around that.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about new board members, the first thing to think about before you get into anything about skills or the types of people is you need to look at yourselves. You need to think about, where do you want to be in 3 years' time when this first person's term is up? What do you want to look back on and say that person really supported us through X, Y, and Z and made us have an impact that we got to our end of our 3-year strategy plan? this is the amazing things that we did, because that will help you to figure out what it is that you actually need and the support that you need. Also, the mission piece helps you with, you know, the softer skills, the types of people, what are the motivations and passions of these people that you need to connect with, that you need to try and tap into. Whenever we're looking for people, I always talk about the hook. So you need to think about something in their background or their experience or their career that has a connection with what it is that you do. And that is the connection to the mission, what you're trying to achieve, because you have more of a chance of hooking that person in and getting their attention. So you really need to do some sort of self-reflection. Where do you want to be, who you are as an organisation? Would you add anything else to that, Liz?
No, I think that's absolutely right. You know, the key thing is you've got to know, you know, what your house is all about and where you want to go as an organisation, what you want to achieve. Are you going through transformation? Are you involved in growth and development? Do you want to deliver new innovative skills? Do you want to create more outreach or digital programs? Therefore, you might need different skills in that respect. You know, this is about what impact does the organisation want to make? Where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And that really forms the types of people that you need to have on your board. The next thing is, how do we know what we need? So you've actually worked out what the organisation is doing and what its mission is and what its future is. But this is, you know, how do you know what people you need and what skills and experience you need to be able to help you? So this is around building a collection of people and a team that can really help you move forward. So that's around looking at the skills, and Jen will take you through that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, so often when I begin to work with boards, we'll have a very long conversation at the beginning with various members of the team to understand what it is that we're looking for. But sometimes organisations don't know what would be helpful, and they often give us creative license to make suggestions. We also like to run skills audit, diversity audits. And when we do these on behalf of boards, essentially what we do is we have a selection of skills, which we'll show you in a moment. But the most important thing is to go back to what we previously said. What's the mission and the strategic plan? Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? If you want to develop more services, more outreach, more commercial entities perhaps, or a different way of working, perhaps you need different kinds of skills, people who have experience in commissioning and contracting. Maybe you want to grow into different types of fundraising. So perhaps you'd like a fundraiser on the board. So you need to go along and have conversations with all of your board members and create an audit. So essentially you're asking a couple of questions to each board member about where do they see their skills on the board? Are they an expert? Do they have relatively good experience in that particular skill, or none at all? And that will highlight to you where the gaps are basically on your board. But just because there is a gap, it doesn't mean you necessarily need that skill. It's all about what it is you need for where you want to go in the future. So there is a couple of things that we highlight. We kind of break them down into specialist skills and then experience. Obviously, you know, most boards will have an accountant, a HR person, legal. We're seeing a lot more recently in fundraising, which is really positive at board level, and also digital and people with experience in social media, not only for a brand and marketing side of things, but also for fundraising. So we're starting to see boards be a lot more open to that and really hungry to see that on their boards. But also when we go into the experience side of things, that's really important. Where are these people coming from? Are they coming from the charity and not-for-profit sector? Are they coming from the private sector? Have they been board members before? How open are you to having new board members as well, which we can talk about in a while? Are you looking for people who've done lots of change and transformation in international spheres? It depends on your type of organisation and what it is you're trying to achieve. So that's a little bit about the types of skills that we would usually identify.
So this slide really highlights, you know, that you're looking for a number of areas in the people. So you've got a mission of where you want to go. You've got an idea of where the skills gaps might be in your organisation, and this is around forming the ask. Really, you've actually highlighted, you know, the skills that you're looking for. You've got a good idea now of the experience that you need to fill in the gaps. Also, what is the culture of your organisation? What are the personal attributes that you're looking for as well? Are you looking for a highly commercial person, or are you looking for somebody with more public experience who might be more politically attuned? And also, what sort of style of person? Do you want somebody who can come in and really make change, or do you want somebody who's a much softer and can move things at a slower pace? This is all the things that you need to sort of take into consideration in terms of your culture, but also where you want to move forwards. So the next thing is around, right, let's prepare the ask, I suppose, let's get it all ready. So this is around, putting together the paperwork, but also thinking about, how to be really open, honest, and so forth. So Jen, you can sort of describe a little bit more around some of these areas.
Yeah, so when we think about the role profile or the role description, that is the bit where you're really speaking to the candidate. This is what they're constantly going to come back to about what their role is about. So I always feel that the shorter, the better. If there's loads of paperwork, it creates lots of things for people to have to read. Also, in that person specification of the role description, this is where it's really important if you want to increase the diversity of your board. So often people will only apply for roles if they tick every single bit of the criteria. But actually, we know that your organizations are way more flexible than that. So don't have lots and lots and lots and lots of criteria, because that will people will shy away from that. So it's about putting yourself on the other side of the table. This is a two-way process. So yes, you do have to say what it is you're looking for, but also be a bit flexible with people. The key criteria are really important for you. One example, if you're looking for a treasurer, does that person need to be a qualified accountant? It depends on your organization. It's about creating clarity, but also some flexibility as an organization. What you really want to communicate to people from the off is the time commitment. That's a really important thing that needs to be very clear from the start for everybody. So, if it's a day a month, you need to sort of flesh that out with people. How does that work? When's the timings of the board meetings? You may have board meetings 4 times a year, 6 times a year. When do they take place? Where are they based? All that little information helps people to know whether it's going to fit in with all their other responsibilities and everything else they do. And then my favorite bit, the honesty piece. Trust me, don't be afraid to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly of your organization. People love a challenge, and they love to be the person that comes in to support and help. So they want to know what's under the underbelly of it all. So the more clear and transparent and honest you can be with people, the better. So let it all hang out, as I say.
I think the timing and time commitment piece is the key question that people ask us when they're considering a voluntary role. And that is around, when does this job start? So if you're looking to, say, appoint somebody in a month's time, that is really challenging. What you do find is that people who are already sitting on boards will not or cannot step away at short notice. They will see through their term of office. So the longer period of time that you can prepare yourselves to appoint and to get people started on the board really is a benefit. So I would always say, if you're looking 6 months in advance, that's usually really good. So succession planning in that respect, looking at when people are due to finish their terms of office and really plan ahead for that is really, really key, because people then say, actually, I am coming off my board, in 5 months' time or even in a year, and actually, I could cope with that for half a year or so forth. And just stressing the time commitment piece is really, really key. It's around, how long the meetings are, how often they are, and when they are. Some boards are changing some of their timings of their boards to actually start later in an afternoon rather than a whole day. So that is a consideration, particularly if you want people with current skills. For example, if you want accountants or lawyers or people like that who are currently, experienced and therefore in executive roles themselves, it's very difficult for them to then take time out of a full day, particularly if there is travel involved. So that is a consideration as well, is around when you have your meetings, and also are there opportunities to join meetings virtually and so forth. So looking at different ways to really, help people join your board and make it possible for them to be involved. So So the next bit is around how we go out and about and really raise the profile of the opportunity. And this is around, you know, advertising, looking at all the ways in where we can place this opportunity. And there are lots of different ways where we can do that. And we can share some of those with you. So Jen, do you want to start off on that?
Yeah, this is the real opportunity to go and shout about your organisation and how great you are. This is your opportunity to speak to the general public out there about who you are, what it is that you do, what you're excited about in the future, how you want to bring on new people to the board that can, you know, support your organisation or change your organisation, help you to grow, help you to ensure there's sustainability, that you're on a stable base. This is the opportunity to really show your personalities, because we can recruit people to boards, but at the end of the day, people need to get on with one another and know that they can work really well together. So they need to see your personalities, you as individuals. So in the past, we have done podcasts and videos with people, and they always go down really well. It's worth investing the time in this little piece of the process, because this is where you'll get real engagement and excitement from people, not just potential board members, but just the general public. It's about raising your profile, who you are. So that's what I'd say about the social media piece. Liz, would you say anything else about it?
I think the other thing as well, there are lots of actually advertising that you can tap into, which is free of charge. And that is particularly for unremunerated board positions. So for example, women on boards, you can post free on there, NED Exchange, NED on board, non-executive directors. There are also, you can post up if you want a legal person. So Bar in the Community, they have a notice board for trustee roles as well. Also, if you wanted somebody finance, audit or so forth, the ICAEW Volunteers has a free notice board to post up opportunities on there as well. Also, it's worthwhile getting in contact with the business schools and posting up your opportunities there. So there are lots of free portals around there. And if you would find it useful for us to send you a list of those, then do let us know afterwards, because you know there is a lot that you can do of getting your message out there, and it's thinking creatively as well about that. But Jenny's right around, you know, this is a chance to showcase yourself. You know, you are after volunteers, so therefore you've got to make your profile exciting, appealing, and you know, present yourself, you know, to be attractive. So this whole piece, you know, of using lots of different platforms and advertising platforms is really helpful. So this is the aspect where it's more proactive. This is around, you know, putting in the research, I suppose, and this is where, you know, Jen and I out, you know, sort of experience, you know, comes to light, and we wanted to share with you, you know, some techniques really, I suppose, and places where you can also look yourselves. And, you know, we've highlighted 3 key areas here. It's about, you know, knowing how to go about it, but also, you know, what are the communities that you can tap into to actually look for people, and also the networks. And this is around mapping. This is around mapping networks and communities and so forth, and really understanding who is in your catchment area or in your communities to help you in this respect. So one of the first things that we do when we're looking for trustees and board members and so forth, we map out all the organisations that are in your catchment area. So I always think of it as a bit like an onion, I suppose, you know, and it's all the sort of the different layers. So who are the major employers in your area? What are the major groups? Who's on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, local enterprise groups? What are the big private schools in the area? What are major clubs in your area, sporting clubs or clubs of any sort? You know, what are all those networks? Think quite creatively around what is in your community. Also, you know, have you got an alumni? Have you got connections elsewhere that you can? This is about mapping all the different areas that you could potentially look at. Jen, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say this is the bit that takes the time. So it's worth putting in the time into this because it will pay off. And also, just to second that, be brave. Don't be afraid to go too big. Go right for the top. You want the best possible people. So get out there and tell them why they'd be fantastic to join your board. Another area that I find is quite helpful for me if I'm looking for a specific sort of hook to get people is I think about what universities they went to. So if we're working with an SU, you know, alumni of that university, God knows where they are nowadays and what they're doing. And also, what is it they studied? So, for example, I've worked with quite a few conservation charities, and people you've studied conservation, environmentalism, have went on to be accountants and lawyers in different spheres. But they also hold that to their heart. It's close to who they are as a person. So I often go and find out what other people have done in the past as a little hook. So that's another little clever idea that I use.
So this is really around, you know, making connections, I suppose, and really thinking creatively. And as I say, that, you know, this is the bit that maps out, you know, your landscape of where you actually could find people. The next bit is, you know, actually approaching those people. So you've mapped out all those organisations, and within those organisations, you probably should be looking at the executive team, but also the board members as well. So you know, you've already got, for every single organisation, you've probably got at least 5 people or more that you could possibly consider. The other aspect as well is perhaps connecting with these organisations and, you know, having a relationship with the chief executive and the HR director, particularly for commercial organisations, and tapping into their CSR programs. You know, they may have development programs of some of their real high flyers within their organisation, and therefore want to really encourage those individuals to sit on trustee boards as volunteers. So it's really good to connect in with major businesses in your area and have that relationship with the HRDs or the chief executives to understand, you know, who are the people within their organisation who could potentially be encouraged to help you. I was speaking to somebody this week actually who works for British Aerospace, and in fact they have a very big CSR program, and they encourage, you know, lots of their sort of management leaders and so forth, you know, going right the way down through the organisation to actually join trustee boards. And this was somebody who was actually sitting on a university board who had had that connection through that route. So you'd be really surprised when you do contact people. You know, they usually say, "Oh, why me?" You know, and actually, you know, people are really, I suppose, feel privileged to be asked. But again, that does need the time where you do have to pick up the phone and contact people. So this is about, you know, just really, as Jen said, you know, going in tall and broad, I suppose, is a big thing. You know, contact people, read the papers, see who's making an impact in your communities. Keep a note of those for the future, you know, and perhaps track where they are. Read your local papers, who's making a real impact in the community, you know, and keep a pool of people in mind. And again, you know, that can help you for the future. That you might hear somebody who's just joined a board. Well, actually, in 2-3 years' time, they might be appropriate for you. So there's a little bit of research, but also maintaining a register, I suppose, of people that could potentially tap into. And also just talk to people around, you know, who else is connected within your networks and within your organisation. Speak to the people around you. Ask what groups they belong to. And, you know, the key thing is around going back to when you're approaching people, have a really good reason of why you're approaching them. Have all your information together, your job description, all the exciting things that you're doing in your organisation, being open and honest about any challenges. So people say, actually, I really would like to talk further, hear what you're, you know, what you're facing, and I'd really like to be part of that, that journey to sort of help you. So this is about being honest and talking to people, and it's key about the communication piece and getting out there and talking to people and networking. So this is Jen's sphere really. We are doing a lot of work ourselves around attracting diversity. I think every recruitment campaign we are asked to bring forward a range of diverse candidates. And it really goes back to the organisation first of all. So we do challenge back when we are recruiting with partners to say, what is your message and what are your policies around diversity? Have you really got a really good grip on that yourselves? Because that's the first thing that people will say to you. So I can't see diversity on your website, for example, they might say, or demonstrate to me what you mean by diversity. And we have been challenged by candidates who say to us, well, I'm looking at the board members and they don't look very diverse to me, so how will they embrace me? So you have got to get that right and really do a bit of homework around that. What does diversity mean to you, and how can you support that and really demonstrate that? It's really, really important. And there are various ways in which we can do that. And the first one is through language, and Jen can explore that a bit further.
Yeah, it's how you describe the role, because often for people who are more diverse candidates, they may not have had, big, massive exec careers or have never been a trustee or a board member before. So there is some hesitancy there. And then when they don't see anybody on the board that is like them or any echoes of that, they sort of lose interest quite quickly. So you've got to communicate that this is an organization and that you are people who want to make this change in your organization, because maybe your service users are more diverse. So you've got to have their voices on the board. You've got to have people with different kinds of views on things. Also, it's not just about the work that you do, but we know from the corporate world that if you have a more diverse board, your organization will make more money and will be more successful, because you will have different sorts of views and perspectives from all different sorts of people. So you've got to really drive that home. And I think the thing that we most come up against is often when we found these people and we've pulled them in and got them really interested and attracted, it takes a really long time to do that. You've got to build a lot of trust and honesty to ensure that people will apply and that will put themselves forward. Often when we do that, sometimes organizations will say, oh, but they've never been a board member before. Or I've heard things like, they've only been an accountant for 7 years and things like that. So you have to look at yourselves and be, again, that thing that I said a moment ago, be flexible, be open, because these people will add such value to your organization. We know that the facts are there. More diverse boards make organizations more successful. So take a chance, get to know these people, and they will help you to push forward. All we can do is support them to see you as an organisation that is inclusive and that is accepting. And when we've done that, it will work and it will all come together. But you
and
need
also around
time.
Sorry, Jen. And also just to explore, around the community and networks. Again, while you're doing that mapping piece, look out for diversity groups, diversity networks. There'll be women's networks, women in business, there'll be Asian people in business. Also look at, organisations that are winning awards for diversity as well. There are lots of different ways that you can actually tap into diverse networks, but also look for diverse people. So it is, again, about thinking creatively and looking at communities, networks that really bring diversity. So the next piece really is who's choosing who, because volunteers, it's a two-way process, and we do have to remind recruitment panels sometimes, that the candidate is choosing you as much as you are choosing them. So it has to be very much a two-way attraction. We do think it's a really good idea when you ask people to apply for a position or to put forward their own proposal, because you've shared all the information with them. It's only fair that they then also send you a CV or a bio or a profile. Not everybody will send you a CV, and sometimes you have to create them yourselves, but also a supporting statement or just a cover note. And that cover note should be around their motivation and interest. It should give you an insight into how they feel they can make an impact and how they can meet your criteria to help your organisation move forwards. So never be afraid to ask individuals for that information. It doesn't have to be very long, shorter the better, because you want people who can summarise and present themselves succinctly. But do ask them for that information. I mean, the higher you go, you do find that some people don't have the full information, so therefore you should be able to find information on them in the public domain and pull together a bio or a profile. But always do the ask, and ask them to prepare something to help you really assess how they approach the role and the thinking around their role. But it is very much two-way, and it is really important to build that relationship as well between the two. When we are recruiting individuals, we obviously have a number of touch points with individuals. So by the time we then introduce them to an organisation, we have built up a really strong relation with them over a period of weeks. If you are doing the recruitment yourself, you've also got to think about that. You're actually nurturing these people, you're building them up. And it may not be just for that one opportunity, but it could also be for the future as well, and that's succession planning. So it's really important to involve them. So that might be, you know, having the opportunity to speak to other people in the organisation, perhaps come visit your organisation on a tour, or, you know, to see what services and on the ground. And really this starts, I suppose, reeling them in. You know, the more you involve and communicate with people, the more interest. It's a bit like buying a house, I always think. You know, you go to see it first of all, you think, yeah, it might be okay. And go and see it a second time, you think, actually, I really, really want to move into this house. And then you start seeing yourself, you know, actually in the house itself. And it's just like that with a board member. You know, you plant the seed and then you really build on it. And then, you know, that seed really grows into something that they really want to be part of. So it is around, you know, really sort of nurturing and building that relationship. And then when you come to the interview, it's around really asking the tailored questions which need to be aligned to your criteria. So that criteria that you have put in place right at the beginning is absolutely key. That is your quality check of the skills and the experience that you need on your board at that time. And you should really stick to that. You know, if you're looking for somebody with really specific skills, you know, but you find somebody really great, don't be tempted, you know, unless you've got the space to actually recruit more people. But they could actually be, you know, people that you could bring on board in the future. And it's about then being honest with them around that, saying, you know, really great candidate, but, you know, we're looking for these particular skills at this moment in time, but we would really like you to come on board in the future. Or, you know, you might have opportunities to actually bring people on in another capacity as a development thing. And that's particularly good for individuals who have not been on a board before or don't quite understand the line between the executive and the governance. So, you know, do you have advisory positions or committee positions that people could come in and actually work with you as a bit of a training piece as well? So looking at, you know, being different ways to engage people and bring them into your community. And I think the key thing overall is around motivation. People have to join your organisation for the right reasons. And, you know, they have to be motivated to make an impact and to help you move forward and to realise your mission and, you know, where you want to be in the future. So really, towards the end of the process, and this is really around, you know, you've gone through the mapping, you've gone through the attraction, you've gone through the interviews of candidates and so forth. You know, it's also around the aftercare as well. And that's around, you know, doing your due diligence, and that's probably, you know, pre-interview as well as interview, which is around, you know, doing checks on Companies House and so forth to see around directorships, making sure that, you know, that is all absolutely okay, but also to I highlight any conflicts of interest. And that's really important to get that addressed right at the beginning when you're talking to people. You know, are there any areas where, you know, that could be a real issue for you? Also, it's worthwhile doing some Google searches around, you know, what's in the public domain about individuals as well. You can actually come across some quite interesting aspects. So, you know, it's really important just to do those bits of extra due diligence as well. And then following on from that, you know, the appointment follow-up, you know, this is about just keep communicating, keep people on board, keep people engaged with you. Tell them exactly what's going to happen in terms of how their appointment is going to be verified, if it needs to go through to a higher board or a council or whatever. You know, make it really clear around what is the next steps and the timings of that. And the other thing as well that, you know, candidates will ask, particularly at interview stages, you know, how am I going to be inducted? So I'm up to speed as quickly as possible. And what training and development do you provide for trustees on the job as well? Trustees are also really keen to know about their impact, and therefore what's really important for them is having a sort of feedback. You know, do you have an annual review for all your trustees or board members? You know, do they really understand where they are delivering impact, where they could be better, and so forth? You know, this is a proper job. They have responsibilities, and therefore, you know, they need to be held to account as well in terms of, you know, their ongoing involvement and impact in an organisation. And then I think the big thing is around turning down individuals who aren't right, having, you know, nurtured and engaged with them and built up a relationship with them, and then you have to turn them down. Now, it might be that you can actually keep them warm for future opportunities, but it may be that they're absolutely not right for one reason or another. So that has to be done very sensitively. You know, we are obviously used to that because, you know, we I suppose have the beauty of saying, you know, there might be other opportunities that might be right for you. But, you know, if you are doing that yourself, it's really important, you know, to actually not leave people cold and hanging and not knowing the outcome, because it's your organisation. And, you know, you've got to put your organisation in the best way, and therefore you don't want people to walk away from a process thinking, oh, you know, I don't want anything to do with them again in the future, or they've really handled it well. And it is about, you know, really, you know, being brave and making sure that you do communicate and turn down people in the right way, and be honest with them and tell them, you know, it wasn't quite the right fit, or we're looking for slightly different skills, or whatever it might be. But it is really important, because in the future, you know, they might be absolutely the perfect person you want next time round, or, you know, in 3 years' time or whatever. So overall, the key thing around recruiting for board members is around preparation. You know, getting it all right to begin with about what you're doing as an organisation, but what skills and what sort of people you need to be able to take your organisation forward, and really making sure that the attraction, and that you're attracting the right people and you've got the right information in place. Communication is absolutely key. It's about being open, honest, and keeping in contact, and being creative. And that's around, you know, mapping, thinking outside the box, thinking where you could go, being really creative, and then being flexible in lots of different ways. And that's around flexibility of using your time effectively to meet people and be available to see people, flexible in terms of looking at different types of candidates and what they bring, not always taking the paperwork at face value. It's always good to speak to people. I recently ran a campaign for board members, and we had 12 candidates, and the most diverse candidates scored at the bottom 3 of the sifting process. But I knew at least 2 of those were outstanding, but because they were sifted on paper and the client was looking at the CVs and the supporting statement, they said no. And I said, absolutely not. You must see at least 2 of these individuals. They bring this, that and the other. You know, they haven't presented themselves on paper very well, and that is quite typical of people in, you know, from diverse backgrounds, but also, you know, some people don't present themselves well on paper, and you do have to be flexible around that. And we went through the process, and they were interviewed, and they both were offered an opportunity, but they were going to be discounted. So that flexibility around, you know, not always looking at things at face value, but putting in the time to really speak to people and get to know them much better than just the paperwork. So that brings us to the end overall. So we'd be interested to really, you know, ask your experiences of how, you know, you've gone about recruitment. We work with a lot of student unions actually, and you know, there is a complexity around that, because you know, you're working with a very diverse range of stakeholders. And that includes, you know, experienced board members who, you know, are independent, but also, you know, you've got, you know, sabbatical officers, you may have a student president and so forth. So there are, you know, lots of different aspects, but it really does go back to the key thing. You know, it's about the preparation right at the beginning. You know, student unions will have a strategic plan, they will have a mission, and therefore you've got to, you know, really, you know, match your board to be able to deliver that and to hold your executive to account. So, you know, sometimes you do have to ask really challenging questions. You know, what are we looking for? You know, what are we really looking for here? If you want us to go out and, you know, recruit individuals, are you looking for finance skills? Are you looking for HR, digital, or whatever it might be, and just be absolutely clear, because the clearer you are, the more likely you are to find the right people to match that. Sometimes it's not as clear cut as that, and people say, just find me anybody, I don't mind. But generally there will be something, whether it's I want somebody with really good international experience who can help us in terms of our international demographics of our students and so forth. It might be that. It could be all sorts of things, but there should be some few hooks there that give you some sort of leverage to be able to go out and search for stuff. Usually executive search, or when you're going out to search, you need to search for something, otherwise you're looking for a needle in a haystack. So I would really challenge back and say, okay, what are we looking for here? Are we looking for these specialist skills, or are we looking for this experience? So it could be a mix of both, it could be one or the other, it could be a real mixture. But if you are responsible for getting out that recruitment and obviously also receiving all the applications or making connections as well, make sure you've got a really firm hook of that. And I would say when people do send in applications, I would always recommend you ring them up and speak to them. And really get to know them a bit more, rather than just reading the paperwork. That's where you've got to put a bit of extra work in. And also not just about using the social media, but look at your alumni, look at people, look at the big organizations in your area. Whereabouts are you based, Amy?
Lancashire, so I'm Lancaster.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, right, okay. So you'll have organizations in that area. Call up the chief exec or the HRD and just say, please can we post our job? Please can you send this round, your leadership team or your board or whatever. People, are really keen to help. And sometimes it's just about the ask. To begin with, everything or a lot of things went on hold, and particularly the permanent recruitment. But interestingly enough, the board recruitment is going and is stronger than ever. And the reason for that is that, boards are really important at this time. They are accountable for an organisation, and therefore you need people on your board who can help you, get through this situation, who can be prepared for risks and challenges. And actually we're finding, we're getting inquiries every day around helping boards recruit trustees. And whereas a couple of roles did go on hold, they've now been speeded up, because they recognise that actually the people on the boards need to make the decisions, and some really critical decisions around the future. And therefore you need the right people on the board to be able to do that. So we are running our processes completely virtually. And even though some board members to begin with were very resistant to that, because they're used to face-to-face, they're used to hard copy papers and so forth, this has been a really good opportunity for people to embrace the virtual world. And we were working with a very old-fashioned board that went on hold, and then 2 weeks later they said, one of our trustees has resigned, we're now critical, we need to move it ahead ASAP. And funnily enough, all the trustees now are really good on technology, and therefore, so actually we have found it more vibrant. We have found it managing the process is much swifter. Actually, we've also found interviewing virtually is also really positive, because you are talking to people in their own environments. Therefore, they are more comfortable, and you actually see them as themselves rather than them presenting. And that's a really important thing, because when you've got people on your board for 3 to 6 years, you want to see them as they are. You don't want to see them, performing or presenting. So actually, we've found that is a really positive thing as well. And also, we have found people are easier to catch, because they are at home and they are not traveling or traveling all over the world. And actually people have the time and the space to think about things. So actually, we've found it a really positive thing in lots of different ways. And what we are also trying to do is to really encourage people to embrace this and really move forwards, because it is still possible to do that. We do have a couple of processes where it is critical for the face-to-face to happen, and therefore we've got to a stage where it then goes on hold for a bit, and we're sort of holding back on the very final bit where a visit to an organisation is going to be critical, or it might be that they need to meet individuals specifically. But just as an example, we're running we've run 2 final panels. In fact, we've run 2 processes completely in this in the lockdown, where we've held both prelim and also final stage interviews. We have one panel going on today for a students' union, where we have 3 different panels involved with stakeholders. So we have a student stakeholder panel, we have a staff stakeholder panel, and we have the actual interviews. And they are all happening by Zoom today, and it's the final panel. And we ran one last week, and it was so successful. The chief executive of the student union emailed and said it was probably the best process they had actually run. So it's surprising, isn't it? But actually, there are lots and lots of positives that we have found.
I've just recruited the whole board for Age UK, Kensington and Chelsea, and we did it all via Zoom from start to finish. We had 9 candidates. We only wanted 3 people, but they ended up appointing 6 people. Everyone said it really worked well because everyone's in their own environment. I'm also finding it that a lot more people as candidates want to volunteer and they want to get involved because of the time that we're currently in. They see they can make a bigger impact by being a board member. So don't see the current circumstances as a negative or a barrier. I think it really is enabling people to actually think back to what's important to them, their motivation to want to support organisations for free as well. So it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. So hopefully that's been helpful. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're here for any advice or anything. So do drop us an email if you just need, any help or any guidance or whatever. We'll be really happy to share that with you. We're not all about the money. We all joined Peridot Partners because we'd all worked in organisations where it was all about, targets and, bringing in the next pound and so forth. And we joined Peridot because, we are an organisation about purpose. And, our key thing is transforming leaders to make societal change. And that's about making an impact in society. So, where we can help, on a sort of pro bono basis, we're really happy to do that, to give advice and so forth. One of the things that I do, I work quite a lot in the FE sector. So I actually run workshops on CV and, presentation skills for college students. And I really enjoy doing that and feel, I'm giving a little bit of something back there. So do let us know if you need any help. We've done a lot of work, around the whole country around recruiting. So if we can help, let us know.